Thank you very much, Trevor. And indeed, I'm joined in studio by lawyer Mboya. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and Bishop Alfred Rotich from the KCCB, who's also joining me to help with the discussion. But first, gentlemen, before we start speaking about election preparedness, I think it's very important to weigh in on what's been happening at the Senate. This is, I think, the third or the fourth Senate Health Committee meeting the doctors or meeting the Ministry of Health with the view of forestalling this stalemate that now enters, as Trevor mentioned, the 72nd day. It's very important. So let's just go over that again. It's sort of a defense of what the ministry, the position that the ministry has taken over time, and the attempt at resolving this crisis, which has now led to the jailing of the doctors' representatives. Let me start with you, Bishop. Listening to CS Mailu and the points, he seems to make a point. However, if you look at it on the flip side, if these points were valid, for example, the steps they have taken to forestall this, it shows, or it now shows that perhaps this strike would have ended days ago, but the strike is still on. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and we are all concerned about the strike. And this mediation should have resolved the issues right in the first initial stages. What I read in this is that there is a level of dishonesty at some level. And I would say dishonesty in the sense that it's not transparent. We do not know what is it that triggered this. What is it that triggered this, and it was not read by the ministry? Because if you look at it clinically, if there is a symptom, yes, there must be something, a disease. And therefore, we don't want to analyze the symptoms, but we want to go back and see what are the causes towards this. And I think what is happening now is too much intellectual exercise. It's not touching the heart. The heart means what is at stake. The doctor is suffering, the patient is suffering, the nation is suffering. And we are saying the ministry that is charged with the responsibility should be the one running the radar, it should be the one looking at the panoramic view and using their skills to attend to the medical practitioners' welfare. Okay. So I think we need to challenge the mediation team, and especially within the ministry, to ask themselves, what is it in all honesty that we are not seeing, we are not hearing?
Okay, you mentioned dishonesty, and one of the questions that Senator Machage asked before we took a break from that live proceeding is the document that was allegedly signed on the 12th, why was it not presented before the court? And I bet that was going to reveal some of the circumstances that has led to the doctors holding to their ground. But looking at that, I want to know from Apollo. One, the LSK and the membership has deliberately kept off this. I haven't seen the representation. Perhaps, why would that be the reason?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would not want to speak for the leadership of LSK, because that's I used to be the CEO, and I want to keep away from it. But I think that they should have done more on this. First of all, we are hearing about mediation. What I could see from the discussions that have been going on is that people have it's been positioning bargaining, and positioning bargaining, you don't go very far from that. If you bargain on issues of interest, then you can make progress. But the problem that we see in the health sector started immediately when we had our new constitution and health services were supposed to be devolved. Now, managing that transition was one thing, and I have to blame the government for that, because when devolution came in, it should have been embraced and structures should have been put to ensure that there is smooth transition. Now, what we are seeing right now is what emanated from that, but also the neglect that has been in that sector. The government has allowed what was meant to be a CBA issue to mutate into a movement now for the reform of the health sector in total.
That the health C has raised, and I'll only pick two out of it because they have an issue with the CBA as it is. I'll pick three. One, they're talking about the salaries. That's the only part that is remaining because those are guidelines that should be issued by SRC. Correct. Secondly, they are saying that the doctors wanted other areas of the practice of medicine be included, including institutions such as Kemri, Moi Teaching.
Managed how those doctors from the training up to the time when they come out and they graduate and they're employed, how are they handled? And going forward, how will they be handled? So it's a big issue.
Problem. It has mutated. Bishop, help me with the understanding that the school of thought that argues that the doctors have effectively, as he says, mutated this movement. But the school of thought argues that the only reason they are calling and they're talking about other areas of reform in the health sector is because they don't want to look like they're greedy and they're fighting for their basic rights. So do you agree with that school of thought?
In a sense, yes. When you allow a problem to exceed the level it's actually being attended to, like say, for example, if there is a conflict, even in a family, in a school, if you allow it to go past what we call the necessary trouble time, then it invites, it mutates, as he said, mutates in terms of diseases. The virus tends to go, and this aspect has grown, and it has grown that the camel is in the house, and you are not able to take it out. So it is now an opportunity for the doctors. If you see it keenly, is that they are using this opportunity now that they are in the house. So the thing is the wisdom and the skill. The wisdom and the skill on how to manage conflict right from the beginning. And I would say that is the burden of the ministry. That it is charged with the responsibility of detecting, is not only issuing policies, but on a daily basis be calibrating and looking at it clinically, the issues of the doctors. So that you don't give people to infiltrate or even find an opportunity. Usipoziba ufa utajenga ukuta. So normally when you are doing the normal maintenance, you do little by little, and at the end of the year you have accomplished. So I think what the doctors issue is has given the nation a study period, a moment of discernment. Are we truly engaging the right people at the right time? Why is it coming? Of course, it has been triggered to come out during the election year. And most of the issues you have seen right in our country, before even with the new constitution, and we had hoped that the constitution, and we hope that it will solve some of the issues, is that there is no honesty in vetting of personnel who sits where, so that you provide what you call a service leadership. If indeed the ministry, what I understand as a ministry, is to serve, is not only on the policy, but to go right to the grassroots and develop a system where you appraise whether it is schools, the training, the employment, and also the firing and the discipline aspects of the institution. So it is incumbent on the ministry now to know how to negotiate. And I sympathize with the ministry
at this point.
At this point. Yes. And that is why we, as a church, we are saying, we don't want to cry together with the patient who is now the doctor and the patient, the ministry, but let us offer a solution. And the solution is to come in, get the stakeholders outside the parliamentary committee, widen the scope outside here, let us reach out so that the church and the ministry and the nation is doing this work. And then facilitate it to the ministry for implementation and make every sector happy. So I think it is called for what arbitration, mediation, and that is the purpose. So in my view, I think we have reached a stage where now we need to conclusively come to a round table.
All right. As we end this discussion, before we talk about election preparedness, I'd like to know, this is a monster that looks as though it's overgrown and the government can't deal with it. I want to understand from Apollo and, of course, Bishop, did they foresee this? Because, one, they did not foresee the strike probably lasting 72 days. And then, secondly, did they foresee totally out rebellion after jailing these doctors? Was it a good move for them to forestall this, or it was a bad move entirely?
I won't judge now, because already you're having a patient on the theater, and the patient has to be attended to. And the patient in this case is that there is a problem on our table at the ministry. We don't want to say now, how did you get sick? But I want to judge and then now put preventive measures. And preventive measures, in my opinion, is to have a ministry service commission, like teacher service commission, police service commission, that on a daily basis looking after the affairs of the institution.
Apollo?
Yeah, for me, I want to retrace our steps back. With the new constitution, and of course, health sector is devolved. But we saw the government with double standard, the national government, let me put it that way. They didn't want to let go. Hence, they signed a CBA. And if you can recall, they were also even entering into some leasing agreements with some of the counties. But the counties were telling them, the Council of Governors then, under the chairmanship of Honorable Isaac Ruto, was saying, no, it is devolved. There is no need of leasing. Please give the money to the counties. And we will manage, the health sector will manage these doctors. The national government went ahead and signed a CBA, and having signed the CBA with the doctors, now they are coming back and saying, no, the health sector is devolved. You should have done it with the governors. And you can see that's where the problem is. Now, should they have foreseen this? The national government mismanaged it. Immediately the new constitution came in, and during that transitional period, they should have put mechanism to ensure that the health sector is devolved, and this problem would have been better managed at the county levels and not what now we are seeing going on right now.
All right, thank you very much, Apollo and Bishop Alfred. We'll be getting back to a discussion on election preparedness shortly, but first, our interview today takes a short break. Preparedness, and with me in studio is lawyer Apollo Mboya, and we have also Bishop Alfred Rotich from KCCB. And on the 25th of this month, that's next week, the Catholic Church in Kenya will launch a nationwide campaign to ensure peaceful and credible elections, which will be later this year. And through that campaign, they intend to go around the country to sensitize Kenyans about peaceful campaigns. I'd like to mention at this point that a lot of non-governmental organizations have been shying off. We don't see a lot of them as at this particular point. Same period in 2012, there was a lot of activity on the ground, but it's very rare. So they are taking the front lead with this, and we'll talk about that shortly. But also the fact that there's a lot of issues that have been going around the country, especially yesterday, what happened by the nullification of awarding of a tender to print ballot boxes, registers, and the rest. It's taking the country back, because Judge Odunga effectively said you have to begin this process afresh. Let me start with Apollo on this one. What did that ruling in a nutshell do to this country and going into election in less than 5-6 months?
Yes, thank you. That judicial review, 637. First of all, we must again retrace back the steps. These were contracts that were awarded after the coming into force of the Election Laws Amendment Act 2016. I was privileged to have been the rapporteur for the Joint Select Committee of Parliament on that. And when we drafted that law, it exited the commissioners. So the commissioners actually resigned. Now, in that period when there was no commissioners, the CEO, Mr. Cheloba of IEBC, went ahead with the process of procuring and signed an agreement with a particular entity to provide for election materials that included ballot papers and also registers. That was the gist of it. What Justice Odunga said in a nutshell is this: when there are no commissioners, there's no commission. So an empty office could not have signed an agreement. That is in line with the decision that have been made also with respect to EACC. Whenever there were no commissioners, it is now trite law that if the commission only is a commission when there are commissioners. So Justice Odunga said that there is no way that the CEO could have signed an agreement when there are no commission, because there was no commission. In a nutshell, that was it. And I've been privy to these discussions, and that has always been also the contention that the CORD coalition was agitating against. The judges agreed with them. Now, what does that mean? Apart from signing when there was no commission, the items that were being procured were not in line with the new law. The new law had incorporated the use of technology. And the technology was on the biometric voter registration, biometric voter identification, and a results transmission system. Now, what the procurement did was to procure ballot papers, for example, that did not have barcodes. Okay? So the procurement itself was flawed. The process was flawed. What was being procured was flawed. Again, lastly, the issue of register, because it was part of the procurement, apart from the ballot papers, the register. The register that was envisaged with the law is not a paper register. Because if you capture biometric, you cannot print it in a paper. What you require, the register that is envisaged in the law, is now actually electronic, so that you can go and even verify if your biometric is there. So what was being procured was not in tandem with the law.
My question before I go to Bishop Apollo will then be, one, there are timelines to be adhered to. Everyone is committed to having credible elections, verifiable by the end of the year. And Chiloba, acting as the Secretariat of IEBC, probably acted in good faith. I'm saying probably. There is no law that allows the Secretariat, in the absence of the Commission, to take a leading role and beat the timelines.
Good. The question is, was there a commission? That's the most important thing.
In the absence of the commission, we cannot...
there's no commission.
All right, let me go to Bishop.
Lastly, on that issue, actually, it's a big issue, because it's also tantamount to abuse of office itself.
To take a unilateral decision.
If you escalate it, and of course, abuse of office with all its attendant consequences can be invited on Chiloba on this particular issue.
And someone might just go to court now that Odunga has nullified that and bring a new action against Chiloba on this.
Yes, because he said it was irregular and was unconstitutional.
Did not follow any laid down election laws. All right, Bishop, the commitment here to have a credible election, and what we have been speaking about with Apollo goes to the core of having a credible election. In the absence of the commission and the need to beat the strict timelines, what would we have rather done?
I think it calls for, again, being in the to have an arbitration line. There is need to mediate and to heal that which has been wounded. Because, yes, there was no commission, but now there is a commission. What can be done so far so that we can fast-track that? So there is need to encourage our learned brethren to look at the common good. And the common good is that we need an election on the 8th of August, which is credible. And that means the processes that made towards the election ought to be credible. And that is why many people are asking about this question. But let's soberly now and calmly solve the issue. Now that there's a commission, could they work harder and even more time into it so that we can arrive and get to our goals. If we are left at this point and we engage in, litigation or this, then the mwananchi's time, our time is wasted. But I'm not saying, say the truth and now work on the process to implement it within what is being given to us. Now, the Catholic Church encourages that we go and do credible elections. Credible elections need a peaceful environment. And that peaceful environment meaning having put the commission in place, that already sets, it has vented out something. So we can see the nation breathed a sigh of relief. Now, using that opportunity, we need to rally now the people, the electorate, to inform them, do civic education, and especially to enlighten them on what it means to elect a credible person, a person of integrity. So that means they have to have what we call an appraisal system within themselves. And if need be, they sit in caucuses and even in the grassroots level, as in the church, we know it is small Christian communities and also in parishes, to vet leaders and see that right now we are grappling with issues which should have been solved by the governance that we put in place in devolution. So then we need to engage the populace now to use the skills within reach to bring to the nation credible people and to ensure that the environment is sober enough that we can sustain a credible election.
Bishop, the document, the law that we are talking about, the Election Amendment Act 2016, is actually a compromise per se, because it was a compromise between political parties before the commission even had to exit. So can we say the process leading to this law already was compromised, its implementation? Because already even it defeats the real meaning of enacting laws, because soon after we saw what happened in Parliament in December when they went acrimoniously, and of course they changed the law from electronic to manual registers, So already that defeats the purpose of having that amendment in there.
Yes, I cannot go retrogressively now, since it is a law, isn't it?
Yes.
It is a law. And this nation we have amended law 2016.
Regardless of the manner in which that law was amended?
Because much as it was negotiated, it gave Kenyans an opportunity to solve their own issues.
Okay.
We didn't have to go outside ourselves. And we agreed upon ourselves that this is going to move. And our intelligent and learned friends came, even though it took about 5 hours in the negotiation. But where we are now is much better. And we need to move forward now, to engage now people to gain confidence. Let's have this technology right. Let's have the nation knowing that we are going to election, build that confidence so that we don't have to put the nation at an alarming state all the time.
All right, Apollo, could there be anything that stops the IEBC, now that this has been nullified, from again using this company from Dubai? Is there anything that stops them? Because they already it's been established that they had the technology, probably. They had the resources, and they had the capacity to deliver. Is there nothing that stops them, or something that stops them from being used by IBC, regardless of what has happened in court?
Yes, they cannot just use them directly. What the judge directed is that the whole process must start again, which means you advertise, there's again competition, there is evaluation of the procurement again, and then there's the award.
Which takes a minimum of 3 months.
It can take a minimum of 3 months. If it's not done properly, it will go through the same process. Remember, this matter that ended up in court was before the Public Procurement Review Board.
Novus
and I remember, and you sat there.
Yes, and I sat there. So if you look at the dispute resolution mechanism, it can go further. And you can imagine, even right now, in this decision, if there is an appeal that goes to the Court of Appeal and then subsequently to the Supreme Court.
It can take 2-3 more months.
Yes,
okay.
And if I was advising the commission, is that I will tell them not even to try and appeal because it will delay further.
They should just begin.
They should just begin
proceed
immediately. They made their bed. They must lie on it now.
Okay,
yeah.
We have a few minutes left. I'd like to talk about something else that is also very important to the church. The heat in the country currently, owing to what's happening. Look at yesterday when the National Youth Service personnel were arrested trying to register voters. That shows the passion and the interest, the manner in which Kenyans are interested in this election to an extent that any small thing raises temperatures. Is that good for this country at this particular moment?
No. I think we need to put leadership, and we must stand our ground to manage a crowd. Management of a crowd is one of a test of leadership. If we allow Tom, Dick and Harry to carry out exercises, then it now brings us back to where we are coming. Because emotions, once it is not controlled by the mind, reason, then you will have anybody on the street. So our encouragement and our appeal is to ask all leaders, parents, teachers, doctors, everyone, the churches, and even the leadership now, beginning from the president up to the governors, to appeal to reason and say, let's go calmly, soberly, so that we can discern this opportunity for us. And if we cross the bridge, I tell you, we would have cancelled a lot of deaths in terms of we not been carrying a lot of wounds. So what I would encourage, and in the spirit of the conference, is that let's walk soberly. Let's engage one another. Conversation is be warm and not just raise emotions in the country. And if we do that, then we ensure a peaceful election. So I would encourage the nation at the moment is that let's walk gently. And I think we were shown, we benchmark with my brothers and sisters who are in the political arena those days when we were negotiating. There was a lot of sobriety. Okay. And that sobriety gave us something. So if we do the same and we multiply it, at the end of the day, across the country, then and that is why we are calling upon the nation as we launch the Lenten campaign, even on the 25th of February, which we are doing this deliberate. It has been an exercise, but because of the need to galvanize, there is need to bring people together, then we are housing this program at the University of Nairobi on the 25th, on the ground where the Pope actually challenged us, and we are saying, in order to have a credible elections, we need to have a peaceful environment.
Okay.
And our peaceful environment ensures a peaceful election.
All right, I'll give you a few minutes more to close. And Apollo, the role of the civil society, the church has taken the lead, but the role of the civil society is not lost to Kenyans, that the civil society has been weakened sufficiently, or has been with a measure of, in the last few months, we've seen even they had something last week, and they're talking about weakening them and their inability to participate in this election. Yes. Yeah. Does it concern you as we wind up?
Very, very much. Indeed, the civil society plays a very important role in the election process, right from civic education and even to observation. But again, that is where I have a problem with the way the state machinery works. The state has been coming hammers and tongs over the civil society and even other entities that are willing to participate in this particular important process of elections. Right now, we have seen civil society who are trying to engage in that space. Either they are being intimidated or funds are blocked so that they do not participate.
And that's not good for us.
And that is not good for us. And you'll realize that the gap on civic education is missing because the government cannot offer civic education on its own.
A
few seconds to give us your final words, Bishop.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I use this opportunity to rally our brothers and sisters in the media And a while ago, we had a meeting with the editors, and we appealed that we need to collaborate and send out positive messages to the country.
Okay.
And then subsequently, in the coming days, as the politicians gear up in their campaigns, let us also bring the nation together. And we pray to God that He gives us the wisdom.
All right. Bishop Alfred Rotich, thank you very much from the Catholic Conference, and of course the advocates Apollo Mboya. Always a pleasure having you in studio.